Hello, Year 7, and today we're going to be carrying on our scheme of work of Princes of Wales, and we're going to begin studying Edward and Llywelyn. So as a starter task, we're going to do Roman numerals and regal names. So your regal name is your name for your king and queen. So here you can see on the top line is Roman numerals, I for first or one, II for second, and so forth until you get to XII. So Roman numerals are letters that represent numbers, or groups of letters that represent numbers. You may see them on some clock faces and watch faces. They get used a lot less now, but they're still used for kings and queens. So here we have 6 kings and queens with their regal names and their Roman numerals behind them. What I'd like you to do is write out what these are in words. So I've done the first one for you. So he'll be King Henry VIII, because he is King Henry VIII, which, as you can see from the table at the top, is the 8th. So for the rest of these, you can do them on the worksheet in your books or on paper. I'd like you to write down the other 5 names out in full. Okay, so if you'd like to pause the video now and go and do that. Right, you should all be back from doing that. Start a task. So we're going to move on. To begin with, I don't want you to confuse Llywelyns. There are several Llywelyns in Welsh history, and 2 that are closely linked and often confused here are Llywelyn the Great and Llywelyn the Last. They are different people. Llywelyn the Great is Llywelyn the Last's grandfather. And you can see here on a family tree on the right-hand side, Llywelyn ap Iorwerth is Llywelyn the Great, and Llywelyn ap Griffith is Llywelyn the Last. We will be studying this Llywelyn, Llywelyn ap Griffith. You can also see here on a timeline of how they ruled as the Prince of Wales. So, Llywelyn the Last and King Edward the First. Llywelyn was born Llywelyn ap Griffith, so Llywelyn, son of Griffith. He was born in 1223, and he became Prince of Wales in 1246. He ruled most of Wales, an area called Gwynedd, and he didn't like Edward I's father, Henry III. And it's also difficult to know exactly what he looked like. King Edward I was born in 1239, and he becomes King of England at the age of 33 in 1272. He's the son, as we said, of Henry III, and he wanted to conquer Wales. Again, it is also difficult to know what he looked like as well. Here we can see a picture that was paying homage to Edward I. You can see on the left is the King of Scotland, and on the right you can see Llywelyn the Last, and in the centre, above both of those, is Edward I. So he's showing that he's ruling both of these countries and he's in charge of them both. So here's some tables, some facts about Llywelyn the Last as Prince of Wales and King Edward I as King of England. And so your first task is, I want you to use the information in the previous slide to write 1 paragraph about Llywelyn the Last and 1 paragraph about King Edward I. I then want you to use the information you have written in your paragraphs to decide who you think is the most powerful between both of these rulers. Is Llywelyn more powerful, or is King Edward more powerful? And I also want you then, for a third question, to decide why you think it is difficult to know exactly what both of these men look like. Why would it be hard for us to know what they looked like? So if you'd like to pause that video, pause the video there and go and complete that task for me. You can do it again in your worksheets or in your books or on paper. Right, you should be back now from doing that task. So we're going to move on to Llywelyn's land. Llywelyn ruled most of North and Central Wales. So as you can see, he rules quite a lot of Wales. It was a very mountainous region, and the most prosperous parts of Wales were around the edges, around the coastal parts, and the Isle of Anglesey. So you can see why someone would want to rule these lands. To the east, you can see here marked by the orange parts towards England. They were borderlands, and they were ruled by great marcher barons who were loyal to King Edward I. So they were ruled by England and loyal to them. So these areas were known as Welsh marches. You can see they also stretch across the south of Wales down to West Wales. So if we compare the height between the height of Llywelyn's lands and the size, you can see here on the left a map showing height above 600 feet and comparison to the map of Llywelyn's lands. So for your next task, using these two maps, I'd like you to answer these two questions. First of all, how much of Llywelyn's lands do you think were mountainous? Was it 20%, 50%, or 80%? And I want you to use using the statements on the next slide, which I will show you in a second. I want you to produce a table showing the advantages and disadvantages of ruling a mountainous land. So here you are. Here's all the statements that I'd like you to sort out into a table like this, showing advantages and disadvantages of ruling a mountainous land. Again, this is on a worksheet for you, or you can do it in your books or on paper, or the easiest way possible for yourself. So if you'd like to pause the video now and carry out that task. So you should be back now from finishing those tasks. So finally, as a plenary, I want you to pretend you are King Edward I, and I want you to write down 3 things that you would do to keep Llywelyn the last under control. So Llywelyn is loyal to you, but he doesn't really like you and didn't like your dad. King Edward I now, he's come in charge of England, become king, and he wants to take over Wales. What would you do to keep Llywelyn under control and on your side? So that's the last task of this video, and I shall see you next lesson. Thank you very much, Year 7.